We are on the hour. Welcome. I'm Offenbonger. We're here to talk about how we could drive more sales in your dispensary and boost that average order value. With me today is Bob Negen. Bob is one of the country's foremost experts for independent retailers on what they can do to run not only successful businesses, but what they can do to drive more sales in their store. We want to start off with a really simple place to start right off the bat. And that's how much are you leaving on the table right now? Let's take a quick minute. Bob, we're going to run through this little exercise with them. Let's take a quick minute. This is an actual situation for a dispensary. They own 2 dispensaries in a major market in the United States. And their average order value in that store right now is about $60 a ticket, yet their top selling bud tender sells $69. And as Bob and I are going to elaborate, your top selling bud tender gets the same customers as all your other bud tenders do. They just do more with them. They have different conversations. They show them different things. And we're going to talk about all of that. But you can see the math there. If all of the bud tenders in that particular business were selling at the rate of the top bud tender selling bud tender was, that's about $1.3 million impact. And what I want you to do right now, real quick, I know all of you that are on this call right now, you know the average order value in your dispensary. You also know what the value of the top selling bud tender is doing. And I've been in 800 dispensaries. Generally, the top seller outselling the store average anywhere from 15 to 40%. Quite a gap. Take the difference, multiply it by the number of transactions you have, the number of stores you have, the number of days you're open, and the number of weeks in a year, my friend, and you're going to get an astronomical amount of money that you're leaving on the table. Now, you're in the right place because Bob and I are going to walk through and show you how you can get that money and put it back where it belongs. That's in your pocket and in your register. So let's show you the money, baby. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, so that's the average. You also, every store I've ever been in, have people who are way below the average. So there's always a couple people dragging it down. So actually there's more potential there than we were looking at. But this is it's a great way to look at it. And $1.3 million is a lot of money. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
When we talk about, that's exactly correct. A lot of opportunity, much more than that. And what I want them to do real quick, if you're on the webinar right now, do a rough calculation of what the economic impact is to you. So let's move into showing you the money. Bob, first tip that we wanted to share with them is threshold discounting. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So threshold discounting is really simple. If you spend a certain amount of money, you get a discount associated with it. And this becomes particularly important when you get to know regulars. You just say, hey, do you know that if you bought this much, you could save 10, 15, 20, whatever the number is. But, there's only 3 ways to grow your business, Brian. Get new customers, increase the average ticket, and get your customers to shop again and again and again with you. And the fastest, easiest way is to build the average ticket. And this is just a very simple way. And most of the next tips that we're going to give are directly impacted by the bud tender. This one has to be this is a merchandising tip, but if you have threshold discounting in your store, you owe it to your customers to mention it. You owe it to your average ticket to mention it. So it's a really straightforward way to build the average ticket.
You'll see in this example where Truly is employing that very basic concept. You saw on the previous slide what this type of tiered discounting, what kind of economic impact it could have on your business. And it is a tip that we wanted to share with you. Now, as Bob shared, we're going to talk now specifically about sales things, about things your bud tenders can do to drive the average ticket. And man, this is powerful stuff. I'm excited to share it with you. Bob, let's move into our first tip, and that's sell premium products.
Yeah, so we call it, in the world of sales training, when I train this, I call it selling out of your own pocket. And, Rolex is a very expensive watch. And there's an old retail sales adage that goes, you don't have to wear a Rolex to sell a Rolex. And often, and I see this happen in every industry I work in, people sell to what they feel comfortable buying with. So your premium products are always more expensive than your sort of middle tier products. And what I'm encouraging every bud tender who's watching this to realize, just because you might think product B is less expensive and therefore is a better deal, doesn't mean that it's perfect for your customer. So we'll talk about this at the end of the webinar, but I teach this process called 6 steps to the perfect purchase. And the perfect purchase is all about the customer. And so if somebody comes into your dispensary and they want the best of the best, and you're trying to sell them something mediocre because you feel it's a better deal, you may feel like you're doing them right, but in actuality, you're doing them a disservice. So we'll talk about the 6 steps later, but really, it's not about what you think is best. It's not about what you think is the best deal. It's about what they want, and understand that that a whole bunch of people only want the very best, especially when it's something affordable like cannabis. So sell premium products. Don't be afraid to show premium products. Your average ticket's going to celebrate it with you.
And you want to make sure not only are your bud tenders showing these, but there are ways you can even spotlight them on your menus, online, within the display options, within your stores. Lots of different ways you can do that. You want to be showing those premium concentrates, the live resin products, infused pre-rolls, top shelf flower. And Bob's point, we want to emphasize before we move on to tip 3, that's this. You don't want your people selling from their pocket. They have a price range they can afford that may be entirely different than the customer that walks in their store. Great takeaway there. Bob, our next tip. You know, one of the things that we're very aware of, we have people from across the country that are on our webinar, and there are different states. You've got different regulations. I was in over 800 dispensaries, and it is amazing how each one of them operate differently, as well as how each state has different regulations. So depending upon your state, our next tip is going to be great for everyone, and that's sell larger quantities. Talk about that, Bob.
Yeah, sure. So, and the first thing, well, one of the misconceptions I see all the time is, oh, if they buy what they need from me now, that they're going to come back when they need more. And I don't care. You know, I work a lot with quilt store owners. Oh, you know, bike shops, clothing stores. And there's this assumption that you own the business, meaning the customer will be loyal to you. And it's just not true, right? So I just drove home from northern Michigan, and I live in Grand Haven, Michigan. Here's Michigan, there's where I was, here's where I am. I drove through a small town in northern Michigan, very small town. There are 7 dispensaries in Kalkaska, Michigan. And so to think that if somebody's your customer, that they're going to come back to you is incorrect. The assumption of loyalty is false. So having said that, what you want to try to do is you want to try to sell your customer bigger quantities so that when they run out, well, first of all, they won't run out nearly as quickly. So that's doing them a service. Remember, it's always about the customer. It's always about making the customer happy. It's always about doing right by the customer. And when you sell them more, they won't run out when they don't want to run out. And when they need to replenish, you don't want to assume they're going to come back to you. So there's this concept called customer share. And when you sell them more, larger quantities, you are really getting more of that business. And again, what are you doing? You're doing right by your customer, and you're building your average ticket at the same time when you sell them as much as they need so they don't run out when they don't want to run out.
See it all the time. I can never forget being in a dispensary in Oklahoma City and having a bud tender tell me there was someone that was in that store almost every single day. And they were in that store buying an 1/8 every single day. You know, to Bob's point, when they come in for a gram of concentrates, show them baller jars. They come in for a pre-roll, show them a pre-pack of pre-rolls. all of these opportunities to sell larger quantities. They want an eighth, they should be buying a quarter. They want a quarter, they should be buying a half. You do the math, you know what we're trying to share with you. The point is, these are things you need to be teaching and conveying to your bud tenders, and you need to be doing that on a regular basis. I don't need to tell you what kind of turnover we have in this industry. And I also want to point out that even professionals, people that have been the elite of the elite, even sharpen their axe. They even review the basics, and one of the basics is selling larger quantities. Let's go to our next one. Now, not all of you have the opportunity to sell from a sales floor, so to speak. Some of you have to serve customers from behind a counter. But in my state, in Arizona, in California, and other recreational states, bud tenders are actually out on the floor greeting customers. Bob's got great tips and ideas as it relates to selling add-ons from the sales floor. What do you want to tell? What can we share with them about that, Bob?
Well, sure. Let me give an example outside of cannabis.
Okay.
So I'm a user. I go into dispensaries, but I'm not a cannabis industry expert. So that's why we're here together.
Right.
So rather than share something that I don't know specifically to be true, well, no, I can do something. I was just in a dispensary up in northern Michigan. And on the floor, when I came in, the woman came out from behind the counter, did a great job. She asked me what I was looking for. I was looking for pre-rolls. She showed me some pre-rolls, but you know, there were so many opportunities right there. It was like, well, there, the sale is done. And you can chime in just a second here, Brian, but I'm going to use the example from a clothing store, a woman's clothing store, because this is an example I think that really sort of shows it. When somebody goes into a woman's clothing store, it could be argued they're there to buy a dress. Hi, I would like a dress. Hi, I would like some pre-rolls. But really, what that woman doesn't want is a dress. That woman wants to feel confident. That woman wants to look good. And at the end of the day, when somebody is talking to that woman on the sales floor, in order to help her look the best that she could look, you need to sell necklaces, bracelets, shoes. You know, she needs to go home with everything she needs to have the experience she wants. And so I'll share one other quick story with you here that illustrates the point. When I was in my early 40s, so a while ago now, after a lifetime of superior eyesight, I had to get glasses for the first time. And the woman at the optometrist's office did a great job of selling me my glasses, and I came to pick them up. And I went home with them. And the next day, my glasses were a little dirty. And I said to my wife, Susan, who wears glasses, I said, honey, my glasses are a little dirty. What should I do? And she was wearing contacts at the time. She said, well, they should have sold you some spray cleaner and a cloth, didn't they? No, they didn't. So I had to drive 20 minutes back to the optometrist's office. I walk in and I said, I'd like some spray cleaner and a cloth. They said, well, here, you can have it for free. I was like, I would have gladly paid $7.99 to get that 20 minutes there and 20 minutes back, going from my life. And a couple days later, my glasses got a little wiggly. And I said, honey, what do I do? You see a pattern here? She said, well, they should have sold you a little screwdriver. Didn't they sell you a little screwdriver? I'm like, no, they didn't. So it was 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. I drive to the optometrist's office. They're closed at 1. So I have to drive all the way across town to a superstore to buy the little screwdriver. So what's the point? And this applies whether you're in the cannabis industry, whether you're an optometrist, whether you're in women's fashion, whether you're in bikes, quilts, or hardware. If you're not selling them everything they need to have a great experience, you're not giving them the service they deserve, and you're not putting money in the till that should go into the till. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. You know, again, one of the things I alluded to earlier, in over 800 dispensaries. One of the things I find really unique, I've encountered one individual where you'll go to a display area, and I'm a concentrate user. And so I'll go to a display area where they're showing concentrates, And it's amazing to me, Bob, how every single time I'm in that dispensary, that man has a new vaporizer to show me. Every single time, you know? And if you look, I've got about 8 vaporizers. I didn't even know I needed 8 vaporizers. The point is, Stephen will never let me walk out of his store without at least showing me something else. He knows who I am. He knows that I like new things. He knows that I like different experiences, and he makes sure to make those available to me. And our people have all of these opportunities. If they sell from the floor in the dispensary, there's all these golden opportunities to do this.
That's exactly right. So,
yeah,
you know, let's go back. Why are they in your store? What do they want? What do you really sell? The product that you're really selling is not cannabis. You're really selling, you know, how they feel, the social aspect. You're selling a lot of different things. And really the secret is to ask lots of questions. And we're going to talk about that at the end in the 6 steps to the perfect purchase. But when you understand why somebody is really there and what they really want from the products you sell, and you ask good questions, all of a sudden, what else they need becomes very, very self-evident, and it becomes a sales opportunity. It's another way to increase the average ticket.
You know, and it's a good point. I'm going to segue before we go into our tip 5, Bob, but I know that a lot of dispensaries every single day, you start off with a meeting, you talk about what the average order value is, and we say something like, gang, we need to go up that average order value. And that's all we do. That's all we tell them. We don't give them guidance. And what I want to point out, we're going to talk about this a little bit later as well, that McDonald's built an empire by teaching 16-year-old kids to ask, would you like fries with that? Or could I supersize that for you? Okay. I'm confident if McDonald's could do certain things with 16-year-olds, you're going to be able to do them with your bud tenders. Let's go to our next tip, Bob. Tip 5.
All right. I love it.
Let me get the slide advanced. Tip 5, what we call transitional add-ons. One of my favorites. Why don't you introduce them to the world of transitional add-ons, Bob?
Yeah. Okay. You know, there's a couple of phrases. So I'll just use my experience up in Northern Michigan. So I bought the thing that I came to bought. She took that order. And while we were walking past all of the other cases, this was the perfect opportunity for a transitional add-on. And it is things like, have you seen this? Have you heard about that? Again, don't assume because somebody comes in to buy this thing that they're not open to buying more things. So she could have shown me 4 or 5 different things. Now, this is where it gets really fun for you as a bud tender. You get the opportunity to show your enthusiasm for the new stuff that you like, whether it's an accessory, whether it's something to, whatever it is. I'll let Brian expound on that. But there's great stuff in your dispensary. So have you seen, have you heard of? What do you think about? Have you ever, just on the way. I'm going to go back to the clothing example. So I sell a guy a suit because he's going out and as I'm asking him all these questions, I find out he's going to Vegas for a big, important business meeting. Then, so I sell him the suit. I make sure I sell him everything he needs to look sharp and confident. He's not going to go to Vegas with some crappy shoes or a bad tie. He's going to look put together. He's going to be ready to go.
Why, baby?
But exactly. But then, because I know he's going to Vegas, as we walk past a rack of really, really nice sharp jeans, I say, do you have what you need to look good at night when you go out at night? Then he goes, oh, wait a second. I'm going to be going out in Vegas. I want to look good. So all of a sudden that transitional add-on could turn into an entirely new outfit. So this is where the transitional add-ons start to really come into play. Have you seen? Have you heard about? This is new. All of these questions and statements as you're walking them from the floor to the counter.
And let's expand on that, because this is an absolute opportunity to really, really, really make money here. You can do things like Hey, do you have that disposable you need when you take your lady out for the weekend? Hey, do you have that disposable you might need when you're going out shopping? Hey, this is what our bud tenders are really digging right now. You want to take a look at it. I mean, there's a lot of golden opportunities that you can coach your people and teach them to do, as Bob said. When you're on a floor, if you can sell on a floor in your particular state or market, if you can sell from the floor, when you're walking them, you're making that transition from the floor to the checkout. Great opportunity to do some of the things we've been talking about.
But so real quickly, hey Nate, could you give me some water?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. But even if you're selling from behind the counter, the transitional add-on still happens. It just doesn't happen while you're walking. It happens, you know, so again, they come in to buy the thing, and when the thing has been purchased and all of the things that revolve around the thing, you know, it's the brake cleaner and all of those things, the transitional add-on still happens behind the counter. You know, I loved your statement. Hey, all the bud tenders here are really digging on this. Have you seen it? Have you heard about it? So there's still that opportunity.
Well, I'm going to date myself here. You and I are both going to know this, but I cannot ever recall walking into a record store when I was buying albums and not seeing a list of recommended obscure things that weren't popular on the playlist that store was digging.
That's exactly
why they did it, because people were interested in it and people bought it, period. And we need to be cultivating those in our dispensaries.
Well, you know, and so now, you know, this is more for the owners and managers who are on this webinar, but this is where in-store signage becomes really, really important. So many places in all industries have a product description and a price, maybe as a talkie, you know, some in-store signage.
Sure.
But really, signage is a secret salesperson. So you could have staff picks, bud tender picks, you could have customer picks. So to your point, other things that people are digging, it can happen, you know, in a conversation, but it can certainly also happen with signage.
Outstanding, outstanding point. Everybody's seen one of these, you know. It's impossible to not check out at a grocery store and see counter add-ons. So let's talk about counter add-ons, Bob.
Yeah, absolutely. So we call it a queue. And so this is a queue in a grocery store. And how many of you have walked into you're checking out in the grocery store and you pick up some Kit Kats or you pick up some gum and things like this. And really, there's such an opportunity. You know, so for those of you, most of you don't know me or know my story, but I owned a kite store for 19 years. And, you know, and so our tagline was where fun begins. Here, you can just hand that to me. Thank you, Nate. Our tagline was where fun begins. And we had this silly little toy called a whistling balloon helicopter. And people would come to the counter and I'd blow it up and I let it go and it'd go and fly up in the air. They were $1.99 a piece, and people would go, let's get I'll take 6, right? So all of this space, you know, at the counter, preferably it's at your add-ons at the counter. You showed pictures of lighters and you know, and pre-rolls and all of those things, you know. Preferably, I mean, I like things with a great margin, but the name of the game is margin's important, but really it's about showing it, you know. So have it there. Teach your bud tenders, if you are a bud tender, just again, show it. Hey, do you have papers? Do you have a lighter? So I'll just share, you know, I was in a dispensary in Northern Michigan and it was a beautiful dispensary. I had a great experience. The young woman did a great job. And then I got to the counter and they only had lighters at the counter. And as a retail guy, I was like, well, they're kind of missing an opportunity. You don't want to clutter up your counter, but you could have more than just lighters. So, and this is just food for thought for everybody who was there, who was watching this. Brian, what do you think the #1 SKU in independent hardware stores is?
A screwdriver, I don't know.
That's what when I do this live, everybody will say battery, screwdriver, screws. It's
Okay.
candy.
Candy.
It's
Huh.
candy. So this is just food for
Wow.
thought. You
Wow.
could sell candy at the counter. You could sell, I mean, I know people who sell all kinds of things. So we call this expanding your mix. So there's this idea of an adjacency. So I'm going to make a really little diagram here. You can see there's two circles, right? You probably, I looked and maybe you couldn't, but two circles. And one circle is your current merchandise mix. It's what you sell. And one of the ways to build your average ticket is to expand your mix. And I call it adjacencies. Adjacency means be next to. So the question to ask yourself is, what else can we sell to our customers that still sort of fits in what we do? Like to your point, if you were to have a wall full of hammers and saws, it probably, it's too far adjacent. But could you sell snacks? Could you sell things that aren't necessarily cannabis related that your customers would go, oh, that's cool, I like that? Could you sell, I see some dispensaries have books. Could you sell clothing? I don't know, but it's just kind of a challenge because this is about how you build your average ticket. And one of the ways to build your average ticket is to find those little adjacencies, to experiment with adjacencies, to expand your mix a little bit so that somebody who comes in to buy this thing, when they're here, especially if you have skilled salespeople on the floor, they also buy that thing.
And you need to know your market as well. Because again, I'm in a recreation state. I'm in Arizona. Not only is it a recreational state, but it's also a very heavy tourist state. And tourists, when they come into a dispensary and they're here and they're visiting, and people in Las Vegas and out in California, they're visiting, they need items like lighters and one hitters and stupid little stuff that you can put at the counter that are easy for them to spot. Oh, by the way, just like the people do when they impulse buy coming through the checkout lane at the supermarket buying that candy bar.
Yeah, but I'm going to take it one step farther though. Okay. Brian, I'm going to say if it's demonstrated, Great. So I'll share another quick story. Okay. So I spoke in Holland, Michigan, a little town just south of here, and I talked about add-ons, impulse items at the counter. And a woman, it was in October when I spoke, and I saw a woman from this group again in February, and she said, oh yeah, Bob, I did that add-on thing. Okay, great, tell me more. And she said, I found some beautiful green and red candles, and I made it a non-negotiable standard. That's an important term here. A non-negotiable standard that everybody who came to the counter was shown green and red candles. If they would have just been there, she would have sold a certain number of them. But they said, have you seen these beautiful candles? And I said, so how did it work for you? And she thought about it. She said, well, let's see, I sold through them twice. I sold $14,000 worth of candles this holiday season. So the reason that I'm sharing that story is to have it there is good, but to have your people show it, ask a question about it, proactively engage the customer with the possibility of it, it makes it even better.
Great point. Great point. Bob and I promised you 7 tips, and we've delivered 7, but we are going to give you an extra bonus. We think that's important, and probably the most important thing we're going to share with you. I want to let you know I've been getting a lot of messages. Yes, we are going to put a replay of this out to you. Many of you signed up through our page on LinkedIn. So please send me through the chat, or I'll leave you my email address at the end, but make sure I have your email. I'll make sure you get a video copy of this. Thank you for your feedback. We'll make sure it's covered. Bob, let's go on to our extra tip here, my friend.
All right.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Extra bonus.
I lied. I lied. I want to go back. I missed us. I want to talk about gift cards.
There we go. Yeah.
Gift cards are important. We can't forget gift cards because they're a great driver for average value.
They're a great driver. It makes it easy. Let's go back to this essential truth. It's about your customers. And if you're taking notes, write this down. The more you know, the better you'll serve. The
Mhm.
better you'll serve, the more you'll sell. And so when you ask good questions, you start to find things, that conversation leads you to be able to add on successfully. And one of the easiest ways when you're having a conversation, if you come to understand that this person has a wide circle of friends who are all, smokers or, users in some way, then what happens? You suggest a gift card. So this is an easy way for you to help your customers check something off their list and, build your average ticket. And this is especially true at the holidays. Again, so to your point, Brian, with a lot of turnover, if you're an owner or a manager or you're a key employee, it's always about training, because don't just assume that somebody's going to go, oh, it makes sense to sell gift cards. It's like our friends at Moynihan Gallery. They had to say, have you seen these beautiful green and red candles?
Who on your gift list do you want to give a gift card to this year? It's
There you
kind of
go.
simple.
Perfect.
It really, really is. And one of the things I like about it as well, not only using a gift card in the way Bob's talking about, so that you can sell those, you can get that revenue, you can bring it in, you're bringing people back in your store. I don't know about you, Bob, but every gift card I've ever been, I've always spent more than the value of the gift card. Every single time. REI, my family buys me REI gift cards constantly. And boy, what a deal for REI that turns out to be.
Yeah.
Another great thing about gift cards or cards like this is you can give them in lieu of discounts. In other words, I can say buy $100 worth and I'm going to give you a $20 card you can use next time you come in. And that could be a way that we could not only drive average value, but also drive repeat purchasing.
So Brian, we should probably get on and do another webinar, say in September or so, because there's a whole set of strategies around all of these things for the holidays. And if I can so humbly say, I'm kind of an expert in all of these things, like I said, this stuff I'm an expert in. You're the expert in cannabis, but you're absolutely right. So you can do this twice during the holiday season, buy 100, get 20, things like that. It drives the average ticket. There's a couple of other, you talked about it here. It says it on the slide. Customer acquisition. When somebody gives a gift card and that person comes into your store for the first time, you've now acquired a new customer. And smart retailers don't look at the value of the transaction. They do look at the value of the transaction, but smart retailers understand that long-term growth comes from lifetime value of a customer. So if somebody comes into your store once and they love the service and the experience they get, and then they become a regular customer, that gift card may have turned into many thousands of dollars. If you want to figure out how to if you want to determine the lifetime value of your customer, just take your average ticket size and multiply it times the number of times your average customer comes in every year. And then you'll get an average annual value, and then guesstimate how many years they'll stay with you. And then that becomes, your average lifetime value. So customer acquisition is wonderful, but it's really about getting new customers and all of that lifetime value.
Excellent point. Excellent point. What better way to gain a new customer, Bob, for somebody to pay you while you're doing it, huh?
That's exactly right.
What a deal.
There's one more thing. Of course, you want people to come in and redeem, but the world, not everybody redeems, or people will come in. They're not going to be like you, Brian. They're going to get a $50 gift card. They're going to come in and they're going to spend $45, and they think they're going to come back and spend the $5 later, and they never do. So that, you're just it's like a little slush fund you got going there, unredeemed gift cards.
A great way to drive that average order value. Now let's go to the average bonus. I'm so excited about the extra bonus we're going to be covering that I wanted to get right to it. And our industry, I think, does a pretty decent job training bud tenders about cannabis, and training bud tenders about products. I know brands are making a lot of efforts, and you've got companies like Seed Talent and Leaf VIP that are out with programs to train bud tenders about cannabis and about product. But although that training is necessary, that training oftentimes doesn't ring the cash register, especially the way the cash register can be run. So Bob, I'm gonna turn this part over to you, my friend.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I learned this. I was at a pet industry event, and we had just launched our retail sales academy, our online sales training platform. And we had a booth, and everybody who came in, we said, do you do sales training? And they all said to us, yes, our vendors give us sales training. And that's when it really struck me that it's important to make the distinction. Product training is what you sell. It's the features and the benefits. You know, it's what you're getting from that training that Brian was just referring to. But sales training is how to sell it. And so one of the things that I see, a mistake I see being made all the time, and it's a costly mistake, is thinking that product training is sales training. So yes, you want to have highly trained bud tenders. If you're a bud tender, you want to know your products inside and out. You want to be able to answer questions skillfully. But sales training is actually asking good questions. We'll talk about the 6 steps to the perfect purchase in just a moment. But understand they are different. And when it comes to driving the average ticket, the average transaction is what we're talking about here. It's sales training that will drive that increase, not product training. Product training is nice. Sales training is what makes the cash register ring. So, and this is great. And so, you know, Brian was showing you earlier that calculation, how that store was, you know, missing out on 2 dispensaries, only 2. You know, I know a lot of you work for much bigger organizations, and they were missing out on $1.3 million, because there's this thing called the gap, right? So Brian, I think that you were saying that in these 2 stores, the average ticket was $60 and
$60, yep, $60 in the example we showed earlier. Yep.
And 69 was the best. Here's what
15% difference. Yep.
15% difference. Here's what I know is that, and now maybe, you know, I'm not an expert in the cannabis industry, but I work with lots and lots of retailers, independent retailers. I don't work with big chains. All I do is work with, you know, small to mid-sized independent retailers. Is that 15% is a low gap. So they're probably getting product training, because I'll often find 40% that somebody is, you know, they've got a superstar on the floor and everybody else is pretty good. So the gap is the difference between what everybody else does and what the superstar does. And Brian alluded to this earlier at the beginning. The superstar does not have access to a better quality customer. Mm-hmm. The superstar is just more skillful in turning that person into a higher ticket. That's just really important. So the thing to recognize, and so let's go on to the next page. So, oh, you can see it. Never mind. You don't need to.
I just want to interject.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This is all stuff that people can learn, right? I mean, you know, this crap of a natural born salesperson and all of this and all of that. The reality is that everything you're talking about, people can learn how to do.
Well, no, and that's exactly what I was just going to share, is that selling is a skill. And it's very frustrating it's frustrating for everyone. So imagine, so if you're a bud tender and you get hired and you're new to the industry and you get thrown on the floor and you don't know what to do, and you sort of have to work your way and feel your way through it and all those things, it's frustrating. And you want to, if you're a manager or an owner, you're frustrated because, to Brian's point, you expect everyone to sell as skillfully as you. And so there's frustrations on both sides. The new bud tender is frustrated because they're not doing as good a job as they would like. The owners and managers are frustrated because they're not getting the sales that they want. And you want to talk about things that contribute to turnover? Not having confident bud tenders on the floor or behind the counter of your dispensary is one of, not having the skills and them being frustrated that they're not competent is one of the main reasons that there's turnover in all of retail. So this is if you want to play more with the numbers in your business, it's retailsalesacademy.com calculator. And essentially you get to put in all those numbers in your business. And Brian showed 1-2 store chain that lost $1.3 million. If you're watching this and you work for an organization that's got 10 or 15 stores, so one of two things are going to happen. A, you're going to have a heart attack, or B, you're going to get super, super, super excited, because you can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it as, oh my God, look at all the money we're losing. Or you can look at it as, oh my God, think of all the money we could be making. So you can look at it as a problem or an opportunity. That's up to you. But, and if you're watching this, I would encourage you.
And the reason that I wanted to bring Bob on, this is a golden opportunity, baby. I mean, everywhere I go, again, across the country, over 800 dispensaries, visiting what I do. Many of you may know I run an organization called Budtenders Club. So I'm working with budtenders every single day. The reality, everywhere I go, I hear the economy's bad. This is this is that. The reality, there's a lot of money on the table here. There's a lot of opportunity for all of you. I was excited to bring Bob to you to help show you how to go get some of this stuff. Times don't have to be tough for you. And Bob, let's talk about
so let's talk about that. So one of the things that, as I was coming up, so for 19 years, I owned my retail business, the Mackinac Kite Company, and we were a chain of small, we had, well, at one time we had 30 stores, but that includes our yo-yo anyway. So, I mean, I was a small independent retailer, just like a lot of you.
Well, 30 stores is nothing to shake your stick at.
Well, no. So what the qualifier is that we learned how to sell yo-yos. So of that 30, like 24 of them were yo-yo kiosks. They were called yo-yo universes. But I mean, Brian, we sold some yo-yos, baby.
I'll bet you did.
See, when you go to see a kiosk in a mall, we were doing $15,000 days off 8x10 kiosk in a mall.
Wow.
I mean, we had wow. It's a whole other story. It's a whole other story. But the point is that, so, I mean, I work the floor just like you all do. I work the floor. I came up from nothing. I mean, when I started my business, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any business experience. But one of the things that served me really, really well is that I understood that people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And one of the things that drove me crazy as I would read books about sales training, as I went to a couple of retail sales training seminars, is everybody treated the customer like a credit card with a piece of meat. I mean, a piece of meat with a credit card. Mm-hmm. They never treated them with respect. The best sale was always about the most money. And hear me out here, because this is about the average transaction. But what I realized was that when you gave your customers the best possible service, when you focused on getting them to exactly what they want, that I called that the perfect purchase. So it's not about you and what you want to sell. You sell, your customer purchases. And when you get your customer to a perfect purchase, I have found that 95% of the time, the average ticket's a lot higher. Why? Because you're selling better quality products. You're adding on, you're giving them everything they need, right? It's the glasses, the cleaner, and the little screwdriver. So the average ticket goes way up, but not only does the average ticket go way up, but your customers are happy. They're more loyal to you. They tell your friends about you. So it's what I call an upward spiral of prosperity. You know, if all you're trying to do is get the money, you might build a business, but if you take care of your customers, you're going to really build a business the right way. You know, they're going to tell their friends, all those things. So let's move on to the next slide, if you don't mind. So in that, going back to what Brian was saying, that this is a skill, that it needs to be taught, that even shy people can be incredibly effective salespeople if they're taught, if they're given a system that they can use on the floor. And I'm not going to spend a bunch of time, you know, going through each of the steps, but I'll just give you the super quick tour of our 6 steps to the perfect purchase, which is the system that we teach. So greeting and establishing a relationship. You know, so many people get this wrong. They, you know, when the person comes in, they immediately go right into talking about product. No. People want to feel like you're a human being. People want to feel like you're on their team. And so there's a whole process, or there's a whole set of skills that allow you to skillfully engage the customer without immediately putting them on the defensive. And then questioning and listening.
All of you have their name. Greet them by name.
Greet them by
Bob,
name.
glad you're back today. Good to see you.
That's right. Good to see you again. That's right. No, that's exactly right. You know, one of the things that might be helpful, I know here in Michigan, you have to show your driver's license. Well, my name is Robert, but if somebody were to ask me, how would you like to be called? Are you Robert or Bob? That sort of puts us on the same level, puts us on the same team. So that first little bit, you know, eye contact, a sincere greeting. In this part, we talk about comment or compliment. You know, you see somebody's wearing Green Bay Packer gear from head to toe. You can comment on the Packers. You know, you can say something nice. But the point is don't start selling immediately. Loosen it up. You're 2 human beings. Make it good. Make it easy. And then questioning and listening. This is what separates the boys from the men and the girls from the women. A good salesperson is always asking good questions. They're understanding what somebody really wants, right? And when you understand, let's go back to that thing I just shared. The more you know, the better you serve. The better you serve, the more you sell. That's all determined during questioning and listening. Show and tell, this is where you're adding on, where you're making it all come alive, when you're really talking about the benefits. And, you know, there's so many things, you know, cannabis is such a sensual product, you know. I mean, how can you make it come alive? What can you do to make that whole experience really, really, you know, real? And then closing the sale. So many people do not know how to close the sale, to actually ask for the money. And especially, Brian, you know, you've been to 800 dispensaries. So especially if a sale is good, the dollar goes up, the dollar goes up, the dollar goes up. And we're talking about selling out of your own pocket. So the higher the transaction value, the more an inexperienced salesperson starts to freeze, the more that they don't do what it takes to get to the person to the register. If you're taking notes, write this down. It ain't a perfect purchase if there's no purchase. So if you give somebody all the information and they leave because you have a sale and they go to the dispensary down the street, it pains me as a sales trainer. And adding on is number 5 here, but really it happens throughout the whole sale.
Right.
And then do I have time to say just a little bit about that 6th step?
Yes, you do. We're doing pretty good. We told them we'd be an hour. We've got 11 minutes to go.
Okay, great. And if anybody has any questions I'm going to volunteer you too.
Absolutely. We're going to make sure that we get all that covered for them. Yep.
But so the 6th step, it says thank you here. But one of the things that I teach, and one of the things that our best clients, and we have clients all over the world, independent retailers in every industry, from one store to 100 stores. The best merchants use that opportunity at the end of the sale to proactively seed, no pun intended, the next sale. So for instance, if you have a loyalty program, to not just, so the loyalty program to not just say, oh, okay, you got your points, but to say, wow, this is where you are on your journey to redeeming the prize. If you have in-store events, this is an opportunity to give them a flyer, and not just a bag stuffer, but to say, hey, we got some great stuff going on here this month. If you can do a bounce back, and so again, it's all about regulations, but if you can do a bounce back for maybe a free pre-roll when they come in the next time. So, one of the things that I'm encouraging everybody to recognize is if somebody has had a great experience all the way through their visit, when they're at the counter, this is the perfect opportunity to make them feel love. This is the perfect opportunity to really proactively build that next sale into the conversation. Does that make sense?
Beautiful point. Earlier this morning, before we started, I'm in a dispensary here. I make a purchase. I'm not going to give all the details of it, but I get home. Bud tender basically takes my order, rings it up, and that's all they did, grunted at me, and out I went. And I get home and I get an email from this company. And in 2 days at that very location, they're having one of the founders of a brand called 22 Red. The guy is a guitarist for a band called System of a Down, which my wife happens to like. So I might take her by to get a little autograph and pick up something. And yet that bud tender didn't say a word to me. Not one.
And that's exactly right. So, and let's go back. I'm so happy that you're saying all these things, because this is a training issue, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I know, because this is what I do, is that the companies that make a commitment to training, sales training, and not just sales training, product training, the culture of the business, the companies that make that commitment are the companies that are going to thrive. And, again, I'm not an expert in your industry, but I watch and I see, and I know that a little town in northern Michigan can't support 7 dispensaries. There's just not that many people. And so what starts to happen? What starts to happen is that you have winners and losers. You have stores that make it and stores that don't. And you know who's going to make it? It's going to be the stores that give the great experience. Of course, there's corporate backing and money and all that stuff, but that is not the essential ingredient for retail success. Assuming you have solid product offerings, which I know you all do, the essential ingredient in retail success is creating a culture where your team knows what to do and how to do it. They're skilled salespeople who go out on the floor, engage your customers skillfully, sell skillfully, and do what it takes to get people back. To your point, Brian, they missed a huge opportunity. That person should have been going, oh my God, you won't believe what's happening here this week.
What sucks is I bought the 22 Red brand even. I mean, it doesn't get more than that, Bob. You've alluded to the Retail Sales Academy and what it is and how it can help people. Let's kind of give them an overview, because I don't want anybody believing that the economy or any reason that they can't succeed. You can calculate how much you're leaving on the table. So let's start to give you a little.
Great. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this really quickly.
I think it's really important for what we're doing for our people. Yep.
Absolutely. So the Retail Sales Academy Plus, and I'm going to talk real quickly about both the Retail Sales Academy and the Plus, but it's an online sales training platform. The Retail Sales Academy is where I will teach your people how to sell retail. And it is, again, You can't expect them to be skillful salespeople if you don't give them the skills they need to be successful. So there's 3 phases. It's built in such a way that you can see which one of your which bud tenders are doing the work. There's accountability, there's reporting, but really it has been, really thoughtfully, if I might add, developed so that it's not just a one-time training, that they get trained in retail selling, and then every week there's a short lesson that keeps their head in the game. Every week we keep them engaged, thinking about being a skillful salesperson. So in the example that you shared, Brian, 15%. And I'm looking at everybody here and saying 15% is on the low end. But let's just say it's 10%. If you're $1 million a year business and you can increase your average ticket by 10%, you've increased your sales by $100,000 without driving any more extra traffic. So if you want to train your people how to sell skillfully, it's just an amazing, amazing resource. But what we really love about it is the plus part, because the plus part is where you get to put your store specific training on what we call a course creator. So this is where you as the owner or a manager get to do operational training, get to put your onboarding, get to put your product training, all the little stuff like, what do you do if the alarm goes off? How do you turn on the stereo? All the little stuff that drives you crazy, all of that you can just quickly, easily create videos, so it just is an opportunity for you to build the in-store training that gives you the freedom to do the work you need to do. So between the Retail Sales Academy and your ability to put your store training on the same platform with the same functionality, all of a sudden for our clients who are all in, who have committed to this, it's been an absolute game changer.
I alluded to this earlier. I work with bud tenders. I founded Bud Tenders Club. We're active. We've got members in every active state that has either medical or recreational cannabis. I know how important sales training is to them, being involved in the industry, being involved in as many dispensaries that I've had. What Bob has is an ability to give you a program that will not only train your people, but provide you an online platform for all the other training that's important within the dispensary. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's highly affordable. I've gone through it all myself in detail. I've known Bob for more than 20 years, but I went through the program so that we can give it our recommendation to you. There's a QR code that you see on your screen now. And for any of you that are having problems, in just a minute, we did a URL shortener. So we've got a short URL that's easy for you. You can either grab the QR code as you see it now. We'll leave it on the screen for a few more seconds here, give you plenty of time to grab it. And again, I want to reemphasize, we are going to send a replay out to all of you. Many of you signed up through LinkedIn. Please make sure that I have your email address to give you access to the replay. There's the QR code. This is the URL you could use if you need to write that down. What you will find when you access either the QR code or the URL, you'll be taken to Bob's webpage about the Retail Sales Academy and Retail Sales Academy Plus. When you're there, you'll be able to get a lot more information. You can arrange for a demo, fill out a form. They'll do a live demo for you to see how this might work for your business. It is extremely affordable. Trust me, this stuff, if you use it, will pay for itself in hours, literally. Okay. I've been all over the country. I've dealt with you. I've bled with you people in Oklahoma that are in a city with 3,000 people and 10 dispensaries. I know what you go through every single day. And this is a program that can really, really change the direction of what's going on. You make the most out of what's coming in your store, the same customers, you just deal with them in different ways. So you've got the QR code, you've got the tiny URL. Bob, anything you want to add?
Just the final thing is, yes, it's all about, I mean, we're all in business to make money, right? I mean, this is why we, I mean, you work, your structure, this was about building the average ticket, and you're here because you want to know about the average ticket. But all of these things that I'm teaching that Brian and I discussed here, they're really about the customer. And, all of this is driven by creating hyper happy, hyper loyal customers. And, the way that we talked about all these things, because that's the real path to true success, is to get those people and show them love, give them a great experience. And you do that by giving your team members the skills they need so that they can serve your customers the right way. So I just wanted to share that, because some people think of selling as being dirty and manipulative, and that's the farthest from the truth. Great selling is great customer service.
And it's a pleasure to do work with people that do their job the right way, period. It's always been that way. And again, I refuse to participate in a down economy. This is why we wanted to share this information with you. You can see right there's my contact information. Please make sure I have your email address so we can get you a copy of this. I encourage you, check out the Retail Sales Academy. It's super simple for you guys to use. Again, I've been in a lot of dispensaries. This will fit in super easy to do and will really move the needle. I do want to answer a question I'm asked all the time. Yes, that is the bong I use regularly. So with that said, we're going to be doing another webinar actually on July 20th, which is a Thursday. We're going to talk about insider secrets for top selling dispensary websites. What kind of things you can do to tune up that website. The average industry site gets maybe 3% of the visitors that result in an online order. Yet there are other sites that are getting 20, 25, and 30%. We're going to dive back. We're going to peel back the curtain. We're going to talk about what you can do to have a top selling dispensary website. Look, I want your bud tenders to do great. I want your store average order value to go through. We're grateful you spent some time to learn what we had to share with you today. Please check out the Retail Sales Academy. And if Bob or I can help you in any way, shape, or form, we're very visible online. You've got my contact information right here. Please reach out to us. We'll be right back in touch. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.